Well, if you're talking about teaching, not a lot, really, to be perfectly honest.
How come?
Well, it's all to do with the reference of teaching and pupils and teachers. It's not really something I think you can teach someone, i.e. show them how to do it. You can perhaps try and help them find themselves stylistically and help them to express themselves better in what they're already doing. But to take someone and to teach him how to write music, I think is a rather false starting point.
But what happens here at York? Are they teaching or are they helping?
They generally teach, I think. When I say teach, I mean there seems to be a sort of reference towards role models, past role models.
How do you mean by past role models?
Techniques
or composers or what?
Well, techniques of composition, i.e. what to do with your material. Well, let's look at how someone else does this with his material.
A performance and seminar built around what Gordon Macpherson calls a role model, in this instance, Bartók's First String Quartet. The students are going to have to immerse themselves in the intricate and arduous business of writing their own quartet parts, using Bartók's top line as a guide part. With David Blake, they dissect and analyse the piece, hoping to glean some ideas from the master's technique.
The violin, second violin, in order to do its imitation, falls down to an E flat, so the minor seventh becomes a major seventh, which is bound to hurt. That leaps up the fifth. You would expect not to have the same harmonisation or the same counterpoint against the two B flat A's, and yet he does. I find that quite interesting.
For Ken Russell's Mahler, life itself might have involved a lot of existential and marital angst, but the act of composition was simplicity itself. All the bits of paper can go out of the window.
I don't choose what I compose, it chooses me. Now you take care of the children and I'll take care of the music.
You're inhuman. You'd rather sacrifice the lot of us than lose one note of your wretched music.
Still there.
Water.
I sell water for a living. Now it's pissing down like hell. Had to walk.
A formal system of teaching, such as York's, is designed to train full-time professional composers who can keep their heads above water in the highly competitive world of music. One York old boy who could be said to prove the success of the York School is Dominic Muldowney, who holds the enviable post of resident composer at the National Theatre in London. He also writes music for film and television.
No one pays me, and no one buys it. Da, 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 da. Buy water, you buggers!
I've got a kind of little algebraic thing at the side of on my piano at home, which tells me that if I have 37 seconds and I feel it's a bright waltz I need, which is in 3/4, this little thing that I can do on my calculator will tell me how many bars of music I need in that tempo. It tells me that within seconds. And it's a curious thing that happens then. It's not the muse descending or anything. It's actually your pen going to the paper, and you draw out 17 bars of 3/4, whatever it is. I can't work it out here. And you see 17 bars, and you think, hang on, 16 bars is two sets of 8 and 1. Now maybe the 1 is just a tail away from the last bar, and that's good in film because it's nice not to always finish a cue on film at the sort of full stop. It's that the film goes on and you go with it. Do you see? Now I've got 2 8-bar phrases. Then I'm thinking, well, I've got a phrase that goes up and a phrase that descends and this thing at the end. And before you realise it, you're composing.
A round and tuneful G major chord is unlikely to be a problem for Jane Gardner. 10 years on, and it's her turn to face the horrors of the composer's workshop. After a tough morning's work at the piano, premenstrual tension is about to receive its first public performance to an audience of Jane's fellow students. Will they be as rude as Mick Wilson's contemporaries were, or will they recognise in it the early stirrings of genius?
Tom, you got anything to say?
Well, I've got a very standard question, which is just about the influences behind it. I mean, it's the sort of the piano style, which is very percussive, and even the kind of harmonies as well. I mean, suggest composers like, you know, Steve Martland or the Dutch school. I mean, did you have the sounds of their music in your head when you wrote it?
Subconsciously, I think they probably came out through me. That's how I feel about it, rather than consciously copying.
Oh yeah, no, I wasn't suggesting that.
Do you want us to view this as PMT in this particular case, as something you've derived a certain amount of sort of formal ideas from, or in particular, I think this is valid in the sense that we only have one female member of the audience here. Do you want us? I mean, I personally found myself thinking, rather than along these quite detailed formal lines, really of how you really felt about this and whether you were trying to communicate a certain amount of anger, particularly to the sort of people that might not understand.
The title is for Jane a starting point. It matters deeply to her, and it prompts musical ideas. What matters to us then is what happens to those musical ideas. And I think that's what we really ought to be discussing.
This last observation, which finally tries to bring the discussion to the crucial question, what is music about, comes from the head of the department, the composer and professor John Painter. Now that the boss has signalled disapproval, the politesse of the earlier contributions gives way to more robust ideas about Jane's endeavours.
Little subtleties about perfect fifths and things flying around, but why are these things being butted up against each other, or do we permanently have to refer to the title?
I think just that one or two people have got the thought in the back of their heads that just because you feel it, it doesn't make it all right. You don't sit and... I mean, I'm a pretty rotten improviser, I must say. I sit at the piano and I feel it like stink and have a good old time, but what comes out is generally rubbish, and I wouldn't dream of perpetuating it by notating it. What happens is you have the strength of
But, unsurprisingly, the great-great-grandpupils of Gustav Mahler don't take kindly to being told.
In order for any kind of originality or voice to come to being, there has to be some form of uniqueness in what's going on. And in that sense, the tradition begins here and now.
It's such a terrible thing, I think, to be sucked into the university system, being a university student and conforming to their ideas of what they want from a piece of yours for an exam.
Do you think you're a good composer?
Oh, I get by, I think.
Brilliant.
Clever